Hello, Year 2, how are you? And welcome to today's English lesson. Now, over this week, we have been looking at character description, haven't we? And we've looked at describing a character's personality, describing their appearance, and then yesterday, we used our senses to describe how the character sounds, smells, and moves. Now, today we're going to moving on and looking at what are called similes, okay? And we're going to be using these similes to describe a character again. So by the end of today's lesson, you'll know what a simile is and you'll understand the different parts that you need to include when you're creating a simile. And then using this knowledge, you will then create your very own similes to describe a character. Now, before we start looking at similes, over this unit of work, we have looked at lots of different things that we can include in a character description. So here we have some definitions, okay? So a word that describes a noun, a punctuation mark, which is used to separate items in a list, a word that is a thing or an object, using 3 adjectives in a list to describe, and a word which has the same or a similar meaning. Now, what words am I giving the definition for here? Could you pause the video and see if you can work out which words I'm defining? Okay, Year 2, so let's look at them together. Well, the first one, a word that describes a noun. Now, when we're giving more information about a noun, when we're describing a noun, what type of word do we use? Oh, yes, we use an adjective, don't we? We thought of lots of different adjectives to describe Mr. Fox and Farmer Bean's appearance, didn't we? So we said, for example, big pointy ears. So therefore, our adjectives are describing our noun. Okay, the next one, a punctuation mark, which is used to separate items in a list. Well, we made lists to describe Farmer Bean's personality, didn't we? But what was the punctuation mark that we used? Well, it wasn't a question mark. It wasn't an exclamation mark. It wasn't a full stop. Oh, yes, that's right. It was a comma, wasn't it? So there we go. There's our second word for our definition. Okay, the next one, a word that is a thing or an object. Okay, but we use an adjective to describe a thing or an object, don't we? So what are we describing when we use an adjective? Yes, like in our definition earlier, we are describing a noun, which is a word that is a thing or an object, like paper or cup or pen. Okay, the next one, using 3 adjectives in a list to describe. Now, we use 3 adjectives to describe Mr. Fox's personality and Farmer Bean's personality. But what was this called? Yes, fantastic. It was called a power of 3. Okay, and the last one, a word which has the same or a similar meaning. So we looked at the words brave and sly, and we thought of other words which meant the same thing or similar. Now, what were these called? Ah, yes, they were called synonyms, weren't they? So therefore, the last word for the definition is synonym. So well done if you managed to get some of those. That is fantastic. Now let's move on to today's learning. So as I said, we are looking at similes today. Now, before I tell you what a simile is, could you pause the video and have a think? Do you know anything about similes already? Okay, Year 2, well, did you know anything about similes? Well, don't worry if not, because I'm going to tell you what they are now. So a simile is a phrase that compares something or someone to something else. So it's a phrase that is used to compare 2 things, okay? And that could be a person to a thing, or 2 people, or 1 thing to another thing, okay? And they usually use the words like or as, okay? So an example where you use like is, she has hair like straw, okay? So you're comparing her hair to straw. But the one that we're going to be looking at today is writing similes that use the word as. Now we have some examples of these underneath, so let's have a little look. So in the first one, it says as busy as a bee, okay? So we might be describing here a person who is always busy. And then we have as busy as a bee. Well, if we think about bees, they're always flying around, aren't they? They're always very busy, always moving. So therefore, we think of a bee as being very busy. So therefore, if a person is very busy, we can compare them to a bee that we know is very busy as well. And we can say this person is as busy as a bee. Now the next one, as quiet as a mouse. Well, we know that mice don't make much noise, do they? So therefore, if a person is very quiet, for example, we could compare them to a mouse that we know is very quiet as well and say this person is as quiet as a mouse. Now the next one, as fast as lightning. Now we know that lightning strikes are very fast, aren't they? They come up in the sky and then they go before we know it. So therefore they're very fast. So for example, if a person runs and they run very fast, we could compare them to lightning when they run, and we could say they run as fast as lightning. Now the last one, as cunning as a fox. Now we know that cunning is another word for sly, isn't it? Now we think of foxes as being very cunning, okay? So therefore, if a person is cunning, if a person is sly, we can say this person is as cunning as a fox. So the fact that both a fox and this person are cunning, we can compare the two people, okay? We can compare the person and the animal. Okay, so now we have learnt what a simile is. Let's have a look at finding some similes in some character descriptions. So here we have a character description, which we have looked at before. It's from the BFG. So let me read it for you. In the moonlight, Sophie caught a glimpse of an enormous, long, pale, wrinkly face with the most enormous ears. The nose was as sharp as a knife, and above the nose there were two bright flashing eyes, and the eyes were staring straight at Sophie. Sophie gave a yelp and pulled back from the window. She flew across the dormitory and jumped into her bed and hid under the blanket. And there she crouched, as still as a mouse and tingling all over. Okay, now we are going to try and find the similes in this character description, okay, when Sophie first meets the BFG. So let me read it to you again, and we're going to stop when we think we found a simile. Remember, we use as, well, we can also use like, but today we are going to find the similes with as. So in the moonlight, Sophie caught a glimpse of an enormous, long, pale, wrinkly face with the most enormous ears. Okay, so we haven't compared the person that Sophie has found with anything else yet, have we? Okay, now it says the nose was as sharp as a knife. Here, as sharp as a knife. So we are saying that the nose is sharp of the person that Sophie has met. And we are also thinking, well, a knife is also very sharp. So if the nose is sharp and a knife is sharp, we can compare these two things, can't we? Using a simile. So we can say the nose was as sharp as a knife. So there's our first simile in this character description. Let's keep reading. And above the nose, there were two bright flashing eyes, and the eyes were staring straight at Sophie. So we haven't compared anything in this sentence, have we? Sophie gave a yelp and pulled back from the window. She flew across the dormitory and jumped into her bed and hid under the blanket. So no, we still haven't compared anything using as, have we? And there she crouched, as still as a mouse, and tingling all over. Okay, now here it says, and there she crouched, as still as a mouse. So we are saying that Sophie is being very still. Now the author here has also thought that a mouse is very still. So therefore, the author has compared Sophie, who is very still, to a mouse that is very still, using a simile. So there is our next simile in this character description. Okay, now you have another character description, which is on Year 2 English, 26th of February, Resource 1. I would like you to have a look at this character description and highlight any similes that you can find. Okay, Year 2, so let's have a look at it together. So it is the character description of the Gruffalo. So the Gruffalo has bright orange eyes and a slimy black tongue. The Gruffalo has an enormous poisonous wart on the end of his wet nose. Okay, so far we haven't used as in a simile to compare two things or objects, have we? Running all down his back are sharp, pointed prickles. Nope, still haven't compared. His claws are as sharp as razors. Oh, there we go. So his claws are sharp And we also know that a razor is very sharp. So therefore here, the author has compared the Gruffalo and a razor because both of these things are sharp, and he has used a simile to do this. So as sharp as razors. So well done if you spotted that one. His fur feels as soft as cotton wool. Oh, here's another one here too. As soft as cotton wool. So the Gruffalo's fur is very soft, but then the authors also thought, well, cotton wool is also soft. So therefore, the author has compared the Gruffalo's fur to a piece of cotton wool because they are both soft, using a simile, as soft as cotton wool. But it is matted and tangled. He has knobbly knees and turned out toes. No, we're not comparing anything there. His feet are gigantic and he stomps through the forest while swishing his long bushy tail. So again, no, we haven't got any comparisons there, have we? So we've got two similes in this character description. So well done if you were able to find them. So now we have a simile here. Sophie is as light as a feather. Now, what are the different parts when we have a simile? Well, we start with what the first thing that we're going to be comparing. Okay, so we always start with the first thing in our comparison. So when we were saying, what was the one in the last one? His fur feels as soft as cotton wool. So the first thing would be his fur. That's the first thing that we're going to compare. But in this example, we are comparing Sophie. Okay, so always start with the first thing you're comparing. Then you have is as or are as. Okay, so there we've got our first as. Then after that we have light. Now what type of word is light year two? Yes, you're right. We are describing Sophie, so therefore it is an adjective, and that is the bit that comes in the middle of our simile. So far we have Sophie is as, light, which is an adjective, and then we have as a, so we have another as, and then a, and then we have feather. So this is the other thing that we're comparing to Sophie. And what type of word is feather? Well, feather is a noun. So you need to make sure that you have an adjective in the middle with as before it. Then you need as after it. And then you need the noun that you are comparing it to. Okay, so here we have some starts of some similes and the end of some similes. So we have as sweet as blue as tall as, and as loud as. And what I would like you to do is have a look at the other side. So a giraffe, the sea, thunder and sugar, and see if you can match them up. Now let's do the first one together. So we've got as sweet as. So the thing that we're comparing is very sweet. Now let's have a look at the other things that we can compare it to and see which one is also sweet. So is the giraffe sweet? No, it's not, is it? Is the sea sweet? No. What about thunder? No, thunder definitely isn't sweet, is it? But I know that sugar is sweet. So therefore I could compare something to sugar by saying this thing is as sweet as sugar. So therefore I can link those two together to make the simile as sweet as sugar. So now I would like to pause the video and have a go at joining up the other ones to make some more similes. Pause the video now and have a go.